Let me do this. I like doing that. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Frontenac County Council's meeting of Wednesday, January the 15th. First issue is we have a resolution to go into a closed meeting.
Moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Vandewaal. Resolved that council resolve itself into committee of the whole closed session as authorized under section 239 of the Municipal Act to consider adoption of closed minutes of meeting held December 18th, 2024 and labor relations or employee negotiations as it relates to the labor relations strategy with QP 2290.
Any comments? In favor? Motion's carried. Morning, everyone. Welcome back to our regular meeting. We begin this gathering by acknowledging and celebrating these traditional lands as a gathering place of the First Peoples and their ancestors who are entrusted to care for Mother Earth since time immemorial. We do so respecting both the land and the Indigenous people who continue to walk with us through this world. Today, the county is committed to working with Indigenous peoples and all residents to pursue a united path of reconciliation. Okay. Council previously met in a closed session, and we discussed labor relations or employee negotiations relates to the labor relations strategy with CUPE 2290, and we adopted the minutes of the previous meeting, December 18th, 2024.
So there is a motion by Councillor Fowler and seconded by Councillor Leonard. Resolved that council rise from committee of the whole closed session without reporting.
Any comments? In favor? Carried. Okay. Do we have a disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none. Adoption of the minutes.
Moved by Deputy Warden Saunders, seconded by Councillor Gowdy. Resolved that the minutes of the regular council meeting held December 18th, 2024 be adopted.
Comments? In favor? Carried. No delegations or presentations, no proclamations. Committee of the whole.
Moved by Councillor Greenwood Spears, seconded by Councillor Smith, that council adjourn and meet as committee of the whole council with the deputy warden in the chair.
Comments? In favor? Carried.
Well, good morning, everyone. We'll begin the Committee of the Whole with a presentation by our CEO, Mr. Farrell.
So good morning, Warden, Deputy Warden, and Council, and Happy New Year. As always, I'll take you through the CAO update for January 2025. I'll touch on the main points and happy to answer any questions. So first off, to highlight a few items from my January schedule. So on January 7th, we had the first meeting of the Governance Review Committee. A big thank you to Jeanette for providing a detailed overview to the committee and getting the ball rolling. There are a number of bylaws and policies that are slated for review, starting with the sale and disposition of land. And to promote public engagement and transparency, we have posted further details to our Engage Frontenac website. On January 9th and 10th, Warden Lichty and I attended the annual general meeting of the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus. It was a productive 2 days with lots of information sharing, and we started preparing leading up to Roma conference. We have another virtual meeting for this on Friday as well. Along with many members of council, I'll be attending the upcoming Roma conference and will be involved in supporting the EOWC at various delegations. In terms of a human resources update, we have 356 postings as of December 31st. This includes postings for up to 30 part-time paramedics to commence employment in 2025. There are a number of ongoing labor relations items. CUPE 2290, we're moving to conciliation. It's now booked for February 25th. We have EASA negotiations for the paramedics OPSU union scheduled for March 13th. No dates booked for bargaining at this point. And we continue to prepare for CUPE 109. We also recently had an arbitrated award around taking vacation while on paid sick time without authorization, and we were awarded in favor of the employer. Under miscellaneous, there's a number of ongoing items that commonly appear here. So we're still working through our Verico scheduling software. We recently met and our senior leadership team met and discussed the Star Garden Succession Management module. So that's being rolled out. Barb's been working hard on wrapping up our 360 feedback, and we continue to do additional policy updates. Thanks to a generous donation from the Dementia Society, residents at Fairmount Home enjoyed an evening of good food, music, and dancing to celebrate the holidays. And you see some nice photos there. As well, Fairmount residents also celebrated the new year with a few photos here as well. A few updates from our Frontenac paramedics. Our new paramedic resource is now in place and will be following a 4-on, 4-off rotation with the hours being 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Our MPDS system remains on track for a February 5th deployment and training is underway. The new Zoll monitor rollout is also well underway with more training taking place there. We continue to monitor offload delays and have unfortunately seen significant spikes as KGH and system partners have switched over to their new Lumio system. So I know the chief has been keeping a close eye on that. And a big shout out to Chief Gowdy, DC Popov, DC Hurtubise, and Ahmad. You can see them here in the photo packing up Christmas meals for the paramedics that were working over the holidays. In terms of digital engagements, we posted a very respectable 9.7% increase on our digital channels in 2024 over the previous year. Most of our planning applications that were approved during December and January were delegated authority consents where the public notice had been circulated prior to the start of the postal strike. And I don't have a slide for this, but finally, I just want to extend a huge thank you to Brianna McKeithrin for everything that she does behind the scenes. We don't know the exact date yet, but Brianna will be taking a leave at some point as she is expecting. She'll be busier than ever, but as Joe can attest, it'll be a huge blessing to have twin girls. So I know Brianna works very closely with many of you on council on various items, so I just wanted to recognize and appreciate all that she does. Congratulations, Brianna, and we wish you and your growing family all the best. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Are there any questions for the CEO? Councillor Greenwood Spears.
Thank you very much, Nat. And one of the things that I raised at the previous meeting was when it was proposed that up to 30 part-time paramedics could be hired in that. And I know the chief said that he was new into the role and he was going to be checking back onto that, knowing that usually there's a higher turnover within the part-time paramedics and the onboarding training is the very same in duration and expense as to the full-time. So I wondered about that review and that to see if there's been a realignment perhaps to more full-time and less of the part-time. And then I have a second follow-up question, but if you'd like to respond to that one.
So I think there was two parts to that one. So the alignment of the training. So as I reflected on that question a little bit more after our meeting last week, I said most of that stuff was not like people coming from other services would not be exempt. In reflection, there are actually a few sections where they would be exempt coming with other training. So a prime example of that is the autonomous the autonomous IV program. If you're already certified that, we don't put you through that same thing. But otherwise, most of the stuff they go through during orientation is new service specific stuff. And the second part of that question for hiring full-time rather than part-time, I think that's probably a budget ask and certainly something that we're going to look into heading into next round of budget, but that's still off quite a ways.
Okay. And then I have another piece of the question, and that's regarding the offload delays, which again, I raised that point that the hospital has difficult time in trying to staff it, but we're the ones that get the additional funding in that to make sure that it actually is properly staffed. So I'm wondering if there's been any consideration potentially of doing it as light duty or supervisors. assisting in that when there is no active support at the hospital, or to contract in our own RN staff and that can do it.
So on that note, most of the time, if people are on light duties, they probably wouldn't be appropriate to place at the hospital to work solo based on their restrictions. Similarly, for the supervisors taking over, again, they have a very needed role in operations to manage the busy system we currently have. KGH has been good at staffing that. I don't think there's been any gaps in staffing since November, when we had the 24-hour offload nursing start. And in fact, during Lumio rollout, when we were seeing an increase in offloads, I think they had a couple of times where they were able to add extra offload beds. So I think we're working pretty closely with KGH in accomplishing staffing that offload nurse as best we can.
So then I'm confused as to the significant spike in the amount of time that the paramedics are dealing with the offload delayed, and how the KGH Lumio factors in to make it significantly spiked.
Sure. So I think, I mean, really, I think it's a system-wide problem in the healthcare system that we're experiencing. So Lumio did create a spike, and it did cause some more offload delays, but that was one factor among many, especially leading into the holiday season when people are traveling and gathering a little bit more. It's also the height of the respiratory season with circulating influenza, RSV, COVID, things like that, as well as the hospitals seeing much greater influx of patients across the board for whatever reason, as well as the patients at KGH are staying longer, which also causes a flow problem in the whole system. So it's not just us. We are a small representation of a system that is under extreme pressure right now.
Warren Lutke.
Thank you. So I met with Kevin Farrell and Mark Gowdy, and we talked about paramedic service. We talked about offload delays and issues and so on. The one thing that became apparent, while there are improvements, a lot depends on the caseload and the number of ambulances that are arriving at a hospital within a specific period of time. Let's say you have 4 offload beds or 5 offload beds. They're filled up, but you got 4 more ambulances sitting outside. What do you do with them? There's just physically no space for the patients. So all you've done in some conditions or some instances is just back up the entire waiting system. Yes, you've taken care of the first part, but the facilities aren't there to keep track of the next. So let's hope those are few and far between. Well, thank you.
Sorry, other questions, comments? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Farrell. I believe you're free to go. I'm sure it feels like prison sometimes. Moving on with the agenda, unfinished business, there are none. The next agenda item is consent reports from the Chief Administrative Officer.
Moved by Councillor Vandewalle, seconded by Councillor Fowler, that council consent to the approval of reports A through C that are considered routine items.
Questions on any of those reports? Seeing none, have a motion to approve? Sorry. Thank you. We have the motion. All those in favor? Passed. Thank you. Next item is the Committee of Management of Fairmount Homes. There is no meeting of the group. Next item is recommended reports from the Chief Administrative Officer.
So the first item, the KMP Trail on the requirement for all motorized off-road users to hold membership with an authorized partnership organization. That is moved by Councillor Leonard, seconded by Councillor Gowdy. And the motion is there in front of you. Did you want me to read all of that?
So questions, comments? We'll start here. Warden Lidkey.
I'm impressed with this particular report. I think the homework's been done. It's all there. I understand the situation a whole lot different. My only question is, when do we have a rough ETA, when we're going to have some kind of negotiations with the EOTA? Because it's kind of just hanging out there. I just want to know when.
After the recommendation is passed, we'll reach out directly with the same terms to the OTA and start the conversation right away.
Councillor Gowdy.
Thank you. Again, thank you for getting this report done as quick as you did and the great work you did on it. I'm quite happy with it. My only question is, it talks about the LNA Ridge Runners and it talks about the Snow Road Snowmobile Clubs. And again, I don't want all of the burden to be put on the ATV users or the four-wheeler users. And could similar agreements be made with the snowmobile clubs? So instead of having guaranteed 30,000, you'd have 60,000 of income coming to offset the expenses.
We can look at discussing it. The legislation in Ontario treats snowmobile clubs and ATV clubs differently. There's a whole framework in Ontario that guides how funding is used, that's provided to, so where the pass money goes, how it's laid out. So it's really a province-wide system that you have to apply for and work with. One of the reasons we don't pursue maintenance dollars directly from the snowmobile clubs is because they provide all of the winter maintenance services without any management oversight or need from the county. So that involves running groomers to keep the trails open in the winter using their volunteers. But we can have those kinds of conversations with them. But it's the system is much more difficult to work with because they're a lot less flexible than the independent organizations such as the Eastern Ontario Trails Alliance and the Ontario Federation of ATV Clubs.
Councillor Fowler.
Yes, regarding this partnership, is that including the whole KMP trail, even the parts that are not complete yet, or is it the part that's only completed up to Snow Road at the Mississippi River?
That's correct. The partnership would only refer to lands that are managed and controlled by the county.
Councillor Greenwood Spears.
All right, I just want to get it clear in that we are talking about the KMP trail requirement for all motorized off-road users. That's the report we're talking about, or is it the next one?
We are speaking to, there's two reports. So there's an
Yeah.
information report that's supporting the recommend report. And so we're speaking to the recommendation that in report 2024-119.
119. So with that, one of the things that caught my attention was the $15,000 contribution, which struck me as low. But second to that, we're still using the terminology about all licensed motorized off-road trail users and that. And I don't think we got it clarified regarding speed. And I'm thinking of electric bikes as well as wheelchair assisted and that because it's motorized and there had been discussion before. So somewhere along the line, we should get it more clear as to which ones are considered motorized that can be problematic or at least more challenging, that do the ruts, et cetera, and that the wheelchairs not so much. Electric bikes, maybe not so much, but then you get to the dirt bike status and that. So we need to get that straight, I think, on that particular report. But for the second report, I'd like to talk to you then.
On the in terms of the understanding where motorized fits with electric bikes and mobility scooters, we're planning to bring a report for a discussion to the Planning and Economic Development Committee, as well as to the Accessibility Advisory Committee to discuss e-bikes, e-kick scooters, mobility devices and a new form of what's called micromobility, are LSVs, which are these tiny one-person electric cars that you may have seen around. So we're going to discuss all of those at the committee level before we implement policy around that.
Okay, and the reason I had mentioned the 15,000 to me seemed low is that in this report on page 4, it indicates that regular maintenance cost of just the 70 kilometers of trail infrastructure for 2024 totals out to 115,694. So over $115,000 more is required. And it also indicates that it's usually the motorized vehicles that make the requirement piece.
The nature of the offer, and we didn't include the offer letter in this agenda that came from the Ontario, the Frontenac ATV Club, was that this was the baseline number. So they would add to this number for every permit sold over 300. And so we would see an increase of what funds are given as the membership grows, which they expect to do if there's a permit requirement on the trail. So it's sort of if we're requiring permits, then more people will have to purchase permits and join the club, which will allow them to have the financial capacity to increase their commitments towards these maintenance needs.
And have we addressed the piece that the interim people that come from far away that may not be regular members, that they can buy the day pass or the weekend pass? And who are they purchasing it from? What's the price?
In terms of both organizations, the wardens who are out on the trail patrolling for safety purposes, if they encounter someone without a pass, they're able to sell a pass to them in that moment, a day pass while they're out there. So they have the infrastructure in place to do so.
And I believe Madam Clerk has some information regarding the bylaws she'd like to share.
Sorry, just so to Councillor Greenwood Spears' question, the actual trails bylaw sets out the speed limits. So the speed limit on the trail is at max 50 kilometers per hour. And when you're going through towns and villages, it reduces to 20 kilometers per hour. Does that answer your question?
Not really in that, because the question is around the motorized aspect. We already know that we don't have a mechanism to actually fine people or enforce the bylaw and that for those speeds. So looking back at the motorized piece and that, whether it's a dirt bike or electric bike that has an enhancement in that, we just don't seem to have that piece of information yet as to how this is going to be applicable on the KMP trail and that. And that speaks back to my ongoing concern, making sure that we are well insured, because an accident may happen.
Thank you, Councillor. I assume staff have taken all those things into consideration. Thank you very much. Other questions or comments regarding this report? Seeing none, all those in favor? Passed.
Moved by Councillor Greenwood Spears, seconded by Councillor Smith. Be it resolved that the warden and clerk be authorized to sign the partnership agreement with the Township of North Frontenac if the following conditions are met: that number 1, that clause 8 be removed from the agreement, and number 2, that as previously agreed, the transfer of parcels at the following locations be completed prior to signing of the partnership agreement, and that's PIN 36209-0012, PIN 36209-0030, and PIN 36209-0231.
Comments, questions? Councillor Greenwood Spears.
Thank you. It's mainly around the Schedule B, I guess it's in, for the bridge inspection report. And it caught my attention, the estimated replacement value as well as the condition of the bridge at the time for Black Creek Bridge, South Missouri, I guess. Estimated replacement cost $309,000, rehabilitation year estimate cost for 2025 of 361,000. That would be an expense that we're expected to foot with this agreement moving forward. Am I right?
That would be correct.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Passed. Next item is information reports from the Chief Administrative Officer, item A, 2025-006 KP Trail. That is an information item only. There are no reports from the Advisory Committee of County Council, and therefore at this point, we will return to council.
Moved by Councillor Vanderwall, seconded by Councillor Fowler, that council revert from committee of the whole council to council.
All those in favor? Thank you.
So we have to begin by adopting the report of the Committee of the Council of the Whole, or the Committee of the Whole.
Moved by Councillor Leonard, seconded by Deputy Warden Saunders, that the report of the Committee of the Whole be adopted and that the necessary actions or bylaws be enacted.
Any comments? In favor? Opposed? Carried. Any motions, notice of which has been given?
So there's one there for a motion to support increasing the maximum annual tile drain loan limit to a minimum of $250,000. That is moved by Councillor Greenwood Spears, seconded by Councillor Gowdy. Be it resolved that the Council of the County of Frontenac hereby support the motion from the Township of Adelaide Metcalfe requesting that the province, through the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, consider increasing the maximum annual tile drain loan limit to a minimum of $250,000, and further that council, that a copy of this motion be forwarded to the Honorable Rob Flack, Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, the Rural Ontario Municipal Association, and to all Ontario municipalities.
Any comments? In favor of the motion? Carried. Does anyone wish to give notice of motion? Councillor Greenwood Spears.
Yes, I'd like to move in support of the city of Stratford that has forwarded us information on the Safe Road motion that was passed there to show support, as well as support from the town of Aylmer as opposing legislation that would restrict bike lanes when we obviously have active transport plans in place and that. So there's many cities that are joining, but those two in particular, I think need to have support. I'm not sure if Councillor Gowdy had one that
So-
you're interested.
so-
That you're,
Councillor, is this in the communication section? Or are you
this is giving notice of motion
for the
and
next
that for the
meeting?
next meeting. That
Okay.
so to give support to those two.
So the first one is the City of Stratford.
City of Stratford Safer Rural Roads,
Okay,
and the second is the town of Aylmer to oppose legislation regarding bike lanes.
okay.
So basically, we're pulling them out of.
Yeah.
Pulling them out of correspondence to deal with them next meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
And did you want one? No, okay. Okay.
Anything else? Okay, communication section. Okay. So we're down to other business. Bylaws.
Moved by Councillor Gowdy, seconded by Councillor Greenwood Spears, resolved that leave be given to the mover to introduce bylaws A through F that have been circulated to all members of County Council, and that bylaws A through F be read a first and second time.
Comments? In favor? Carried.
Moved by Councillor Gowdy, seconded by Councillor Greenwood Spears, resolved that bylaws A through F be read a third time, signed, sealed, and finally passed.
Any comments? In favor? Carried.
Moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Vanderwall, that the meeting hereby adjourn at 9:59 a.m.
Any comments? Sorry. In favor? Carried. Wow, that's because Counselor Vanderwall had decided to make a point.